All right, and that will also form part of our discussion in a few moments here on News Center. But before then, the IEBC now says that all the 8 presidential candidates who participated in the August 8th elections are eligible to take place in the repeat election. In a statement, IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati says, in view of the High Court's ruling allowing Ekuru Aukot to run, the 8 candidates are entitled to participate if they so wish. Chebukati says while the Commission has received a letter from NASA Principal Raila Odinga withdrawing his candidature and that of his running mate, they, however, did not submit Form 24A as is required by law. Odinga dramatically withdrew his candidature on Tuesday and demanded another election 90 days after fresh nominations. All right, let me now bring in my colleague Murimi Mwangi, who has been following and focusing on the politics of this country for the last couple of months. Murimi, thank you for joining us. He's joining us from our City Centre studio. Now, Murimi, we're in a serious situation, facing a major political and constitutional crisis. And I'm sure you've been talking to legal pundits and would like to hear what are they saying, because really there are very many, situations and presentations that are being brought about by very many people, if it's NASA, if it's Jubilee, if it's the legal minds. But where really are we with this? And also, are we likely to see Raila Odinga finally submit that Form 24A, as IEBC said it is required by law to formally withdraw from the race?
Well, good morning, Betty. Interesting times for the country. I had a discussion yesterday with the CEO of the National Super Alliance, Mr. Norman Magaya, regarding that query as to if it was necessary for the coalition to submit the Form 24A alongside their letter calling for the withdrawal of their presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka from the repeat presidential poll. And he said that according to their interpretation of the law, it was not a necessity for them to attach that form. But it's now official from the IEBC that any candidate seeking to pull out of the repeat presidential poll has to submit a duly filled Form 24A. It will be interesting to see the next move for the coalition, because that would perhaps necessitate a proper interpretation from the courts regarding what constitutes a withdrawal from a presidential race. There has been an interesting development from the Ekuru Aukot petition at the High Court, which seemingly opened the window for the other presidential contenders in the August 8th elections to also participate in the elections. And that has been a justification upon which President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party has insisted that the withdrawal of opposition leader Raila Odinga from the race would not stop the election from happening. But it is the position of the opposition that even in that petition where Ekuru Aukot was seeking to be allowed to run in the repeat presidential poll, that the High Court did not touch on matters of withdrawal from the presidential race, and therefore for them, their stand remains that former Prime Minister Raila Odinga will not not be part of the repeat poll, and that what the IEBC ought to do, according to them, is to gazette a next date for a fresh election,
right.
which, unlike in this instance where you have the 8 candidates participating, you have even new entrants also throwing their, their hats in the ring. Betty.
Right. Now, IEBC really is hell-bent on still having the elections on the 26th of October. Are we likely to see NASA have a change of heart after, the High Court yesterday threw this curveball of allowing all the candidates to participate and also allowing those who do not want to participate to do so?
Well, it has been a narrative of the opposition that they would not participate in the repeat election until their list of demands in terms of electoral reforms at the IEBC have been met. It will be interesting to also see if indeed NASA will be moving to court to seek an interpretation of what would constitute a withdrawal to them, because there seems to be a standoff here regarding whether the former Prime Minister has pulled out of the race, looking at the statements from the IEBC and the NASA coalition. And interestingly, IEBC has said that it's not for them to decide when to do an election, that it's pursuant to that Supreme Court verdict that nullified President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election, that elections had to be held within a window of 60 days from that date when the verdict was issued, and therefore they insist that they will have to meet that deadline. Remember, the NASA fraternity has said that part of their demands would be the exit of French firm Safran Mofo from supplying the infrastructure for the repeat presidential poll. I also put that question to Norman Magaya yesterday, and he alleges that part of the reason why they are opposed to that company is that the evidence that was adduced at the Supreme Court had, in a way, caused fear within the opposition coalition that even in event that a repeat poll is held with the same company, that the same loopholes of electoral fraud that occasioned that bungled election would still recur in a repeat poll. And that's partly one of the reasons why the opposition has been pushing hard for that company to exit and for the IEBC to outsource for another company. In fact, to quote the words of the opposition coalition, part of the reason why they would be pushing for a fresh election in 90 days was partly to allow IEBC address some of these issues that NASA has been raising. But the IEBC has been categorical that the decision to hold the election in 60 days is not for them to make. It has been placed upon them by the Supreme Court, and they have to strictly adhere to that pursuant to the order from the 7-judge bench that handled the presidential petition. Betty.
All right. Now that IEBC is saying that, all the candidates can participate, in this repeat poll, how ready then are they? Because we're talking about just 14 days. There's that reconfiguration of the Kenya Integrated Elections Management System that has to be done, and so many other things, because they were only preparing for 2 candidates, that's Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, if they open the space for all the 8 candidates, are we likely to see this election actually take place on October 26th as they are agitating for still?
Well, sometime yesterday, Betty, immediately after the High Court verdict on Ekuru Aukot, I tried to access the portal for the results transmission system that had been used to transmit results from across the over 40,000 polling stations across the country. And indeed, the system had been, in a way, reconfigured from what we could say, because there were the only 2 candidates that had been foreseen to participate in the repeat poll in that website, the portal where we could see the results, and that was former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. If the decision to include all the 8 candidates has come from the IEBC, perhaps there has been wide consultation within the commission, and they are confident that they can meet the deadline. Remember, for the better part of yesterday, the commission and the IEBC legal team spent the better part of the day at the Bomas of Kenya, where they were digesting the implications of the Tuesday decision by Raila Odinga to withdraw, as well as the High Court verdict that in a way opened the window for other contestants in that election. But we will be expecting perhaps a more detailed statement from the IEBC regarding the changes that they will be instituting at the commission in terms of transmission of results, redesigning the ballot paper to now include all the candidates, and perhaps a communication on the way forward, because remember, much has happened since the August 8th elections. There has been a judgment from the High Court declaring one of the presidential candidates, Cyrus Jirongo, as bankrupt. And in law, you can't hold a public office if you have been declared bankrupt by a court of law. I saw some letter addressed by Cyrus Jirongo to the Chief Justice questioning the origin of that information. In fact, in that letter, he states that the file has been missing, and the file with regard to that particular petition for the declaration of bankruptcy. And it will be interesting in the coming days to get to see what compass will the IEBC be giving in terms of the roadmap to the repeat presidential poll, and just who will be participating, because remember, any of the candidates has the option to either participate or to withdraw from that race pursuant to that communication that came from the IEBC yesterday. Betty.
All right. Marimi Mwangi there reporting from our City Center studio, just painting for us a picture of what really is happening in the political scene with all this new